Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet AFL round 19 betting trend preview show. I'm going to go through all 9 games coming up this weekend, go through what I'm considering betting, who I think is going to win, and also look at the odds, the past odds for each of these matches, who's been winning, who's been covering, what the odds were in those games, what the total points line was, whether their games have been going over or under, all that stuff to help make sure you're making the best possible betting decisions for this upcoming round. We're closing in towards the end of the season now. We have a lot of data about each of these sides, and I want you guys to know that what I go through in this video is majority all based on statistics and insights from teams' performances. So we're not, just looking at who are the good teams, who are the bad teams, and who should win. It's actually breaking down using team performances and key performance indicators and their statistics, breaking down how we're expecting games to play and how we can capitalize on that with our bets for those games. So before we get into the 9 games coming up this weekend, I just want to quickly recap round 18 because we had another big week of games going over. So that is now 5 consecutive weeks going back to round 14, where the majority of games have gone over the total points line. And due to that, now 81 games have gone over the total. Overall, 72 have gone under. Also, last weekend, home teams won 6 of the 9 games. The only away teams to win were the Brisbane Lions against West Coast, GWS against Richmond, and then right up the top, scroll past it, Geelong against Collingwood. Home teams covered 7 of the 9. The only home teams that didn't cover were Collingwood, and then Richmond didn't cover the final line in the Richmond GWS game. Favorites covered 5 of the 9 games. So favorites just had a slight winning record last weekend. And underdogs won 3 games outright. The underdogs who won their games: Hawthorn against Fremantle, Western Bulldogs against Carlton, and then Melbourne against Essendon. So now looking ahead to this weekend's games, I'll bring up the trend report once again. The opening game on Friday night, Essendon versus Adelaide at Marvel Stadium. The Bombers are 10.5-point favorites. Total line is 169.5. Both these sides are kind of struggling for consistent form at the moment. Both of them have lost 4 of their past 6 games overall. However, coming into this game, the Crows come in off a win and Bombers come in off a loss against Melbourne last week. Their previous matchups, Essendon has won the past 7 straight, so they have a very, very good record against the Crows, and they've also covered 3 of the past 4. 10.5-point line. Last time they met in Melbourne, the Crows were a 1.5-point favorite, so it's definitely swung around since then. The last 2 times they've played at Marvel Stadium in 2023 and 2022, these sides only meet once per season. However, they're going to meet twice this year. But in those 2 games, both were very high scoring. Both of them exceeded 200 total points. So with the line at 169.5, I'd have a slight lean towards the over, but that's not how I want to play this game. I feel like it's going to be a fairly close game, but at home, definitely leaning towards the Bombers. On the road this season, Adelaide haven't been that great. They've lost their past 3 games away from home. And this is definitely an important game for the Bombers to win. Also, with that, these sides, majority of their games are decided by 1 to 39. For this matchup, 6 of the last 7 have been. And then if we break it down by each side this season, firstly, Adelaide, in the games where they've lost, 9 of those 10 have been by 1 to 39. And then Essendon, the games that they have won, 9 of the 10 have been by 1 to 39. So we find a good situation here for a 1 to 39 margin, especially with the Bombers. So that's how I'm looking to play the opening game on Friday night. I think Essendon go over the line, but I don't think it's going to be a big margin. On to Saturday, great GWS versus the Gold Coast Suns. GWS found a little bit more form since they win over Carlton, won again last week against Richmond. Now they face the Suns at home. Now it's been well documented everywhere you look. Gold Coast are very good at home, terrible on the road. So that sets up really well for GWS here. And I think they get the win. I'm not 100% sure how I want to play this game just yet, and whether I want to take GWS to cover the minus 17.5 or take them to win 1 to 39. But I think they definitely get the job done. The main issue for Gold Coast is they're just their road performances. If we look at their overall records this year, comparing home and away, home games, they're averaging 104 points, conceding 77, and away games averaging 63 points, so over 40 less and conceding 13 more on average. Hasn't really mattered whether they're favorite or underdog as well in that situation. So with that in mind, GWS should get the job done at home and be looking to play some bets around them. St Kilda versus West Coast, the Saints minus 28.5. Total 164.5. Their last 4 meetings have all been over in Perth. Earlier this season, they played in round 12. St Kilda won that game by 14 points. St Kilda have won and covered 4 of the past 5 versus West Coast. The past 10 between these two sides have been decided by 1 to 39 points. So that gives you an indication these sides have been close. And if you go back prior to 2022, West Coast were favorite in those games. So these teams have sort of switched. When they met in round 16 last season, the Saints were 55.5 point favorites on the road over in WA and was only an 8-point margin. This time at home, 28.5 points. Both these sides are really poor in attack. Both of them bottom 4 attacking sides. Defensively, St Kilda ranks 5th overall. West Coast ranks 16th in points conceded in the league. So St Kilda should get the job done. Not really confident in them covering a 28.5 point spread, even though West Coast, similar to the Gold Coast Suns, are a side that have struggled on the road this season and perform a lot better at home. But it is difficult to take them with any real confidence. Probably the way I'll be looking to play this game is from a disposals perspective. If we look at this matchup and scroll down to possessions and disposals, both these sides concede a high number of disposals to the opposition, and St Kilda players should be able to take advantage of that. They're ranked 8th in uncontested possessions and 5th in contested possessions, also ranked 4th in kicks and 9th in disposals. So we'll be able to target a few key players for the Saints in this matchup and potentially play them alongside the money line in that game. Next game, probably one of the two, there's 3 really good games this weekend. This is the first of them, Hawthorn versus Collingwood. Hawthorn come up favorites here, $1.87, 1.5 point line, total 168.5 points. When they met earlier this season, round 4 at the Adelaide Oval, 4 gather round, Collingwood won that game by 5 points, but didn't cover the spread, minus 27.5. Last time they met at the MCG was round 21 last season. Hawthorn won 105 to 73. Hawthorn have now covered the past 4 straight against Collingwood and have also covered 7 of the past 8 versus the Pies. Hawthorn have also won 5 of the past 8. So I think those recent trends are definitely contributing towards the odds in this game being so close. Also when I was going through their recent matchups, the past 11 have been decided by 1 to 39 points. And I think we can definitely expect a close game. Neither of these sides generally win games by big margins unless they're playing the lower tier opposition. So I think it's going to be close. 2 ways I'm looking at playing it is Hawthorn to win or either side by 1 to 24 points, because I definitely think it's going to be close. That's definitely how I'm looking at it. Don't think we're not getting the luxury of a 4 to 5 goal line about Hawthorn as we've had in their past 2 matches. But I think this is definitely a winnable game for them with the current form that Collingwood's in. If we look at their previous matchups leading into this, Hawthorn, the only game they've dropped over the past 6 was against Geelong. And then Collingwood have lost 3 straight games coming into this, including against Geelong, Essendon, and the Gold Coast Suns. So definitely a really good game. Lean towards the Hawks and either side 1 to 24 as the other option I'm looking at in that game. Another one of the good games this weekend, Geelong take on the Western Bulldogs. Cats are really back in form now. They had their mid-season slump, now looking to make their run towards finals. They've now won 3 straight, beating Collingwood, Hawthorn, and Essendon during that time. They're almost 3-goal favorites here. Last time these sides met in round 4 this season, they were only a 1.5 point favorite and won that game by 4 points. With this game being played at GMHBA, that definitely gives the Cats a big advantage compared to if it was at Marvel or something like that. And Geelong have won and covered 4 of the past 5 versus the Bulldogs. Very tricky to take a side in this game. I do think the line is pretty much spot on at around that 3-goal mark. Don't think there's a lot of value in either side. How I'm looking at playing this game is from a total perspective at 169.5, definitely leaning towards the over in this matchup, even though with the venue that they're playing at. These are both top 5 attacking sides, and the Cats are ranked 12th in points conceded. So the Western Bulldogs definitely should get their opportunities. Potentially may even look at their team total to go over instead of the full game over, but as it currently stands, do prefer the full game over. They haven't increased the line much from their previous 3 meetings, and last time they played here in round 24 last season, total was 165.5, and the Bulldogs won that game as 4.5-point favorites. So it's not really a major negative for the Bulldogs playing here. Obviously, it would be more advantage if they were playing at Marvel, but the fact they did win here last season will give them confidence. They're coming off a win against Carlton last week, and the reason why I like the over in this game is both these sides have shown throughout the year they can score points really, really quickly. Both of them did that last weekend against fairly good opposition as well. Geelong playing Collingwood, and then the Western Bulldogs playing Carlton. So I think we're definitely in store with an over 169.5. And if it doesn't go over that number, I think it'll go really, really close. Port Adelaide versus Richmond. Port, 41.5-point favorites, back at home, $1.09 on the money line. We got another 169.5 total for this game. This matchup, 5 of the past 7 head-to-head have gone under. Richmond are the worst attacking side in the league and second worst defensive side. So this game, Port Adelaide should win and win very comfortably. Not 100% sure if I want to take the minus 41.5. If I had to pick a side on the line, I would take the minus 41.5. This is an important game and a good percentage booster opportunity for Port, especially playing at the Adelaide Oval. We've seen since their loss there against Brisbane, their previous game against the Western Bulldogs at the Adelaide Oval, they really turned up for that one. And I don't think with the kind of the pressure on the team, and they are coming off a loss last week against Gold Coast, I don't think they're going to take this game lightly at all, which they potentially could have done at other stages of the season. And with that in mind, it should lead towards this game being a cover. The other way you could also play this game is from a player prop perspective. Kind of, you can play this 2 ways, to be honest, as Richmond can see the most disposals and uncontested possessions to the opposition. So Port Adelaide players can definitely take advantage of that, and they should get above average numbers. And then also Port Adelaide can see the second least disposals to opposition players and also the least uncontested possessions. And that means that Richmond players should really struggle to even hit their averages in this matchup. So Port should control the ball, and just definitely beware if you're doing any same game multis or any of those sort of bets. Just be cautious, as Port Adelaide don't give up many uncontested possessions, which it makes it difficult for those teams to rack up the numbers against them. And I don't want, your player prop markets to be affected by that. And that's why I use tools like the bet finders that you're looking at here to break down these statistics to make sure, you're not being impacted by those kind of situations that are less than ideal for your bets. Brisbane versus Sydney. This is the best game of the round. Sunday afternoon. It's the early game. Brisbane, $1.85. Small favorites here, minus 2.5. They have won 4 of the past 5 versus the Swans. They do have a really, really good record against them. Not an ideal situation for them, though. The Lions coming back from the late game on Sunday afternoon over in Perth. So it's definitely not the ideal setup for them. However, it is an important game for them to win. They play Gold Coast on the Gold Coast next week. So for them to really cement their spot in that top 4, or at least top 6 as it currently stands, they have to win at least one of these next 2 games. Sydney got the win back against North Melbourne, but their form prior was starting to slip a little bit. However, they did put up, I think it was 138 points last week. So they're back in goal scoring form. How I want to play this game is definitely from the overs perspective. Not only have the past 5 head-to-head gone over the total, both these sides are really, really high scoring sides, and especially the Brisbane Lions at home and Sydney just overall in general. And we have seen how they're just able to score points really quickly. And that's pretty much this year with the AFL. I'm looking for teams in games where I want to take an over. I'm looking for sides who are able to post goals very, very quickly. And there are a few of them. And if you've been watching like the videos throughout the season, you would have heard me mention them as we go through. But both these sides definitely capable of it. Pretty much my only concern as to what would make this game not go over this number is, as obviously it's potentially likely they'll meet again in finals in not that distant future. And if these sides try to play a little bit more of a defensive game style, not to give too much away to the opposition, that would be the only thing that would contribute it to be a low-scoring game. But based on the way they've played previously, they've been in very high-scoring matches. Also at the Gabba as well, which is generally a high-scoring venue, and I think this game can go over that number. Fremantle versus Melbourne. These sides met back in round 12, and Fremantle won that game by 92 points as an 8.5 point underdog. This time around in Perth, they're a 14.5 point favorite. Totals low at 154.5. The 5 of the past 6 between these two sides have gone under the total points line, and we've got 2 of the best 3 defensive sides going up against each other. That's why we're getting such a low total. I'm probably personally going to stay away from that number. Don't think there's a ton of value in taking the under. I much prefer taking a side in this matchup. Fremantle have won 3 of the past 4 and covered 3 of the past 4 against Melbourne. When they've played over in Perth, Fremantle have been very hard to score against, and with this Melbourne attack averaging less than 80 points a game, it should be enough to shut them down. Haven't decided between 301 to 39 or taking the minus 14.5, but I'll be going with one of those 2 options in this game. Also, the other potential way of playing it is going with the Fremantle players to rack up some disposals. Melbourne are ranked 15th in opponent disposals, 16th in opponent uncontested possessions, and Fremantle being ranked 2nd in uncontested possessions themselves, they should definitely be able to take advantage of it. So that's going to be the other option of how we approaching this game. And then the final game of the round, Carlton versus North Melbourne. Carlton 34.5 point favorites, $1.14, total 184.5. The past 6 between these two sides have gone over the total points line. Carlton have won the past 3, and you could also say 4 of the past 5 in there as well. However, North have covered 5 of the past 7. Last time they met, they were 32.5 point favorites. That was round 3 this season, and Carlton scored 137 points. This is another one where there's kind of 2 ways I'm considering playing it right now. Both of them are from a total points perspective. Firstly, the over 184.5 full game total. My only concern is it is a very high number. We haven't seen that many lines into the 180 range overall this season. However, both these sides are really poor defensively, and it's the major concern with Carlton going into finals is their defense. They're ranked 15th in points conceded. Generally, for the most part, to win the premiership, you need to be a top 6 defensive side to give yourself the best shot at winning. And we've seen in recent times, teams are just really racking up the points against them. Last week, the Western Bulldogs scored 100 points against them. The week prior, GWS scored 116. Even North Melbourne, I think, can score the 70 to 80 points in this matchup against them. So that's the potential option of the full game over 184.5, or to just taking Carlton's team total over 109.5. That is my secondary option. The reason I'm leaning towards the full game is just because North have shown some more glimpses in recent history that they are capable of scoring. They scored 87 against Gold Coast, and then they've scored in the 60s in a few of the other games, and also 118 against Collingwood. With the full game total, like we know North's definitely going to get 60 points, if not higher, because Carlton, as I said, ranked 15th in points conceded. I think they could push that 70, 75, 80 mark in this game, and it becomes a bit of a shootout. They scored 81 against them earlier this season, 84 in the matchup last season. And if North Melbourne score into the 80s, then we'll definitely get the full game over because Carlton should definitely kick 100 points. So they're the two options that I'm considering. Carlton, team total over 109.5, or the full game over 184.5. So quickly recap what I'm looking at betting this weekend. The Bombers 1-39 against Adelaide. GWS to win or at the line, or 1-39 against the Gold Coast Suns. St Kilda versus West Coast, looking for St Kilda player props in that game. Then either Hawthorn to win or either side 1-24 against Collingwood. Geelong versus Western Bulldogs, interested in the over 169.5. Port versus Richmond, interested in Port minus 41.5. Brisbane versus Sydney, do like the over 174.5 in that game. Fremantle versus Melbourne, either free or 139 or minus 14.5, and also like the player props in that game. So keep an eye on the bet finders later in the week for when the lineups are announced and the disposal sheets are out. And then Carlton versus North Melbourne, either the full game over or Carlton over 109.5. That's how I'm looking at playing it. I post all my sports bets in the bet finders, which you can access through the link in the description. And you can just get AFL, you can get all the different sports that I personally cover, plus all the bet finder tools. So everything that I use to make these videos, plus a stack more for the AFL. There's over 20 different tools you can use to analyze games, whether you're looking at, head-to-head, the lines, and especially player props, player trends, for you to be able to analyze the best situations and the best players to take. So definitely, if you haven't already, check it out. Use it to end this season on a high, make as much profits before we get to the end of September and the season is over. Don't put it off and wait until next year and then kind of start it. Use it this year, get the hang of it while we have a lot of data for these sides, as pretty much every team's played 17 games so far. And use that information to make really smart bets to end the season on a high. So definitely check it out. If you have any questions, put them in the comments and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. Make sure you subscribe to the channel as well, because I'll be posting videos right throughout, all the way through to the grand final, and you don't want to miss any of them. So thanks guys for watching, and I'll talk to you soon.